We're in part 4, page 434 of the central nervous system. I would like you to commit to memory the location here that we have of each of these areas, at least in terms of the description that's being presented here in this diagram. So in terms of solving complex multitask problems right here, we have working memory for objective recall. We have the executive area for task management. We have working memory for spatial tasks. This is pretty important because there apparently is a great deal of correlation between the frontal lobe in this area right here and also the cerebellum, which we're going to be looking at as a very unique part of the brain for spatial relationships. So while you, as an athlete, you might be using this a lot to make your three-point shots or to pass the soccer ball to a fast-moving team member on the soccer field, etc. You might also be an architect or even a musician or quite a few other skill set areas where spatial relationships, I would submit to you that programming a computer particularly has a lot to do with this idea of spatial relationships, because oftentimes you are sort of building arrays when you're working in computer programming, and what's going on in one array needs to be able, or one portion of an array needs to be able to communicate with other portions of the array. So there are some complex tasks that require us to have sort of an interior spatial sensibility. Okay, then we have all of this motor area here, and it's described here in this motor area listing of items. Then we have our sensory, somatosensory listing of areas. Okay, then we also have the realm of taste. Actually, you have to actually separate this with the retractors again and get into the insula to really see the gustatory cortex. It's actually in the insula. Okay, there's also some aroma issues here associated with taste. So I don't see where they're sticking the smell portion of our experiences, but it's in there. Okay, so you can go slowly over some of these areas. When we get to the sensory areas specifically, we're going to be identifying some even more detailed sort of types of things about this. So you can read through in the, the textual portions of the book and come up with some clear ideas of what's going on. Now, before we press on to the next visual topic, I want to look here at the mid-sagittal section. Essentially, you can drop a scalpel straight down through here and touch nothing at all until you finally hit the corpus callosum. So you're going in between the two hemispheres here, and this area is completely free and available for you to, explore and adventure through as a surgeon until you finally hit boom. There's something going from left to right here, and this is called the corpus callosum. And so this is white matter that connects the left and the right. And there is a whole, display that's referred to as the corona radiata. And we'll see this more than one time because there's ingoing and outgoing information of a sensory and motor persuasion. But then there's also association fibers going from left to right. They're actually called commissural fibers. But the idea here is that they're all collected in this sort of coaxial, sort of cable type of network of white matter fibers. And everything on the left side in the brain is connected to everything on the right side of the brain through this network of fibers presented here. So left and right connections. Some people are highly lateralized. Some people are more global as I mentioned to you before, at least in terms of language and in some other skilled areas too. You could say that they're sort of ambidextrous. So there's something to keep in mind. Again, we have primary visual cortex being more specifically elucidated right here. We have an area here for primary somatosensory cortex. This is the postcentral, the precentral for motor, etc. We have something else going on in here, is that we have the septum pellucidum. Let's take a look at where that's represented here. This is it right here, and they're not naming it, but it's okay. Basically, we have a separation between the lateral ventricles. Okay, then we have, here's the cranial nerve number 1 coming down. I don't see where they're doing the diencephalon here, so the artist did not include all the details here that I would have included. Okay, so moving right along, we're still sort of in the telencephalon, and so that's why our diagrams are looking the way they're looking. Okay, we're still in the telencephalon. We're not yet dealing with the pituitary and the hypothalamus and the thalamus yet. Okay, so here we're actually now considering, here's a frontal or coronal section through the brain, and we can see here the longitudinal fissure that divides the two hemispheres, left and right. We can also see that we have connections even between adjacent gyri. We have connections, association fibers that are hooking up in all of the synapses. And then we have, you can see that, how shall I oh, here we go. Also very distant gyri. So all from here, back in the visual cortex, all the way here to the executive suite, as it's called sometimes, we have a connection. So we can think about things that we have seen. We can think about things that we've touched. We can think about things that we do, physically moving things. So we have all these association fibers in red. That's the red color. Then we have, remember, the corpus callosum connecting left and right, and those are in green here. Okay, so do you see that they've identified the pictures here in terms of the color coding? So the red color, that's called association fibers. Okay, and everything is in red color here, the association fibers. And then the commissure, can you make out that this is a green color? I'm not sure that you're able to pick that up, but the green color is the commissural fibers of the corpus callosum. And then we have the blue, dark blue, projection fibers. The projection fibers are all of the incoming sensory information. Sensory information, generally speaking, except with very, very few exceptions, has to go to the thalamus. The thalamus is the traffic cop that directs the traffic of sensation to all of the different parts of the brain where sensation is perceived. And then wherever motor is initiated in the brain, the motor comes down here through these projection fibers. Okay, so these blue fibers. Okay, so there's incoming and outgoing, sort of highway 80, east and west, as it were. In this case, it's going into the brain or it's leaving the brain. And this whole area up here is referred to as the corona radiata. Do you see it? So we have radiations of commissural fibers, of projection fibers, of all kinds of fibers. We have radiations throughout the brain so that everybody is in touch with everybody. That's the idea here, is we have coherent internal dialogues. Very important. We do have a major crossing over, particularly of the motor projection fibers, and it happens here in the medulla and the brainstem. We haven't gotten there yet. It's referred to as the decussation, which is a term which means crossing over. The next time you cross at an intersection, you can think of yourself as decussating, and maybe that will help you remember the word. Okay, so that's the idea. We have all of these fibers in communication. Okay.